All right, good evening, everyone. Um, Thank you all for joining us on this evening. Um, we're really excited to continue on with this project. My name is Jeff Hall, and I'm the founder and president of Go Educate Inc., a nonprofit organization within the United States. And our mission is to assist our students with the college admissions process. Most of our students are student athletes, so we work heavy in that area. And we feel honored to be in position to collaborate with NAFA, the Nigerian American Football Association. So we're on week 5 for this coaching session, and we really appreciate it, the commitment and dedication that you all have exhibited and learning more about American football so you can expand the game throughout Nigeria. So thank you once again on joining us this evening. We're going to start right now. Um, just letting you all know, this will be recorded. So if you need to go back and reference, we're going to record it and put it on YouTube. And you can always go back to the material on YouTube and reference while studying if you have any particular points. Um, in order to make it through this, session without it being too long, I'm definitely going to paraphrase each of the points you see. But if you have a question at the end of it, please feel free to ask me that question and I can delve a little bit more deeper in it. But I'm just gonna pretty much give a summary of the points that you see presented on today. So with that being said, I'm going to start our session on today. So let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. Everything that we'll be referencing today is from USA Football Manual. Everything will be referenced through our training session is within that manual. So whatever information is provided, we're going to go over it. With that being said, this is chapter 15, being a great teacher. Teaching players during practices was what coaching was all about to me. John Wooden, Basketball Hall of Fame coach. And so John Wooden, a legendary NCAA coach, I believe for the UCLA Bruins, a legendary coach. And this is the quote that he's stating: teaching players during practice was what coaching was all about to me. And so as we carry on into chapter 15, we're going to discuss the correlations between being a great teacher and being a great coach. What you all will see is that in order to be a great coach, you have to be a great teacher. I mean, you can't be a great coach without being a great teacher. I mean, there are some people who win and they're not great coaches, but they amass a level of talent that's superior than their opponents. However, that's not sustainable. You're gonna have to teach if you're going to be a coach and you want your success to to go on and to continue on for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. When we look at Nick Saban, he's the legendary coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Nick Saban has an extensive history of success. He won a national championship at LSU. Prior to LSU, which is Louisiana State University, he was at Michigan State University, and they were a bowl team. So they had a winning record and they competed. And then he took it up with a notch. And so he won at LSU, and now he's in Alabama, and he won so many titles that is now in modern day, the national championship is synonymous with Nick Saban in Alabama. And you'll see his ability to win is because he's a great teacher, in my opinion. Okay. So starting this chapter, we'll see that something that says here, we'll start with the first paragraph. It says the best coaches tend to be great teachers. All factors considered, these individuals are characterized by 3 C's: competence of teaching, consistency of teaching, and caring. And so that's something that's boom, right out the gate. So to let you all know, keep in mind that the best coaches tend to be great teachers. So in order, like I said, to be a great coach, every coach has, not every coach, but there are coaches who have, winning seasons, or they may have a success for a season or two, but in order to be considered great, it has to be sustained. It has to be consistent. And that's what teaching helps out. That's what teaching allows individuals to become. They become great coaches if they're able to teach. And so we see like the first C, competence, and it's defined as a great teacher masters their craft. Um, they are aware of the fact that they need to learn, as well as the process of learning is an ongoing undertaking. So once again, as we carry on, you're going to see me use the pronoun they a lot in regards to points being made. We do realize that we have women that are participating in our workshops, and we do not want you to feel um, isolated, or we don't want you to feel like you're by yourself on this. So I'm going to use pronouns a lot. I'm going to use they as a pronoun a lot because we have a mixed audience. And so, as we stated from our initial meeting, I mean, the game of football has expanded and has progressed so far that we're now seeing more women given the opportunity to become coaches, to have positions in the front office, to become scouts. So everything in here is for men and women. So you'll see that pronoun a lot. So going back to this point, competence, a great teacher masters their craft. They're aware of the fact that they need to learn, as well as the process of learning is an ongoing undertaking. So with competence, pretty much in that, a coach knows that when it comes to confidence, they know what they're doing. And it's not just like knowing X's and O's, or which is referred to, offense and defense, or just knowing the game, but it's also the ability to have a mission of and to have a mission of state of pretty much acknowledging that they need to continue to learn, because the game of football is always evolving. I mean, if we go back and look at film and when the game was initially introduced, you see the game, they ran the ball a lot. They ran the ball a lot. They rarely passed the ball. Now we fast forward 50 years later, you see the game of football has evolved to the sense where now at one point quarterbacks used to probably throw, at most you'll see a quarterback throwing 25 times a game. Now we're seeing a quarterback throwing 60 times a game, because the game has changed. And in order to stay relevant, that's a part of the competency. The coach has to also has to go through a period where they're learning what's taking place, where they're acknowledging that, okay, the game is changing. How can I keep up with the game evolving? Consistency is the second C. A great teacher carries out their duties every day in a consistent manner. Okay. And then with this is something that's going to be very important for coaches. Consistency. I mean, whether it's consistency is how you hold practice. You can't, if you're a coach and you say practice is at 6 p.m. Monday through Fridays. I mean, that's what you have to. That's what, unless there's an emergency, that's what you got to stick to. Because it doesn't help the players, especially if you're coaching minors, if you continue to switch up the practices. We understand it. Emergencies occur, but we're not talking about emergencies. We're talking about sometimes coaches, we have practice on Monday at 6, and then the coach doesn't show up, or at the last minute, the coach changed practice to 8, and the hours all over the place. That's not consistency, and that's really hard and frustrating for the team to continue to improve if there's no consistency. Also for consistency as far as discipline and enforcing the rules. If a coach is inconsistent in how they enforce the rules, that's going to cause a division on the football team, because you'll have players that realize, well, why is this player able to get by when they break the rules, but I'm not able to? Or why is it coach criticizes this particular player when they made a mistake on a play, but they don't say anything to this person whenever they make a mistake on a play? You have to be consistent. Now, the approach at which you enforce your rules, the approach is which how you criticize may be different. However, the premise must remain the same. It has to be consistent. You enforce your rules when this happens, or you provide criticism when this occurs. But it has to be consistent, or that's going to draw up division on the team as well. And third, the final C is caring. A great teacher firmly believes that an integral part of their role as a coach is to help every individual on the team to become um, all that they can be as a player, person, and student. So as we stated when we first start, coaches, they wear many hats. Coaches, they coach. They're also tasked with being fundraisers, but most important, something that was stated in our initial meeting was that coaches are also viewed as role models. And so when it comes to football, and being a coach, you have to care for your players. Unfortunately, there are coaches out there that just want to win. They could care less about anything else. But as for everyone sitting in this session, this is something that we don't want to occur. We want to show the players that we care about them. And so this is going to be something that's major with being a coach, because if you're able to show the player that you care, the player will be able to gain trust in you, and they'll be able to do what they need. They'll be able to, they won't have an issue sacrificing for the team, or they won't have an issue putting the team first. However, you have to demonstrate that you care about them. And you got to go beyond the football field. It's not just what they do on the field. Sometimes it may just be showing the player you care about, helping them with schoolwork. If a player is struggling in the classroom, just asking the player, like, how can I support you? Can I talk to your teacher? And when we can see, what do you need to improve on? Sometimes, unfortunately, there are kids who participate and they don't know where their next meal comes going to come from. As a coach, you may be tasked with providing that meal to that student. But all of those actions show that you care. And then sometimes it's just, how's your day going? Something as simple as that. You know, and players, there's something that, when it comes to football, there's a lot of players, they don't want anything. They're not asking for anything, because they're determined to make it on their own. However, we all need some form of help. And if it's just asking a player how's their day going, they appreciate that as well, because it shows that you care, and it's not just on the field. So these are the three C's that's very important: competence, consistency, and caring. Um, a high caliber coach, a high caliber coach is a great teacher. That's something to keep in mind. In order to be a esteemed coach, a prestigious coach, you got to be a great teacher. And but they're also passionate about the game of football, while also fostering a love of competition. That's one thing about this game. You have to love to compete. I mean, in order to move forward, you have to compete, and so that's what a great coach does. A great coach is also a great teacher, but they also help their students, and pretty much cultivate a culture of healthy competition. Because without competition, there's no incentive to improve. There's no reason to get better. If you don't care if you win or lose, why? What reason is there to get better? As a coach, as a player, as a team, what? There's no. If you don't care if you win or lose, well, why is it? You play the game, and so a coach is there to let you know, like, winning isn't everything, but objective is to win. And in order to win, if we don't want to lose again, we need to work on our flaws, and we need to improve in areas that we need to improve on. And in order to improve in those areas, a coach has to teach the players what they need to improve on. So let's go to the next slide. The attributes of a great teacher. Okay. Okay. Training on how to teach. Coaches are usually on their own when it comes to learning how to be a better teacher. More often than not, the task becomes a trial and error undertaking. And so, what the authors are saying with in regards to this point is that, is as far as being a great teacher, or as far as being prepared on being a teacher for the game of football, most coaches, they have to develop that. That's something that, for some coaches it come natural, but for many coaches, they have to develop that, and there's really no blueprint for doing so. As we stated before, every coach has their style. So every coach has their style of teaching as well. It doesn't mean that your style is right. It's just that in regards to providing or presenting information, you have your own way of doing so. Now, the thing is, in order to recognize as if it's effective or not, that's when it comes to trial and error. Because depending on your team, depending on the players that you coach, certain approaches may work and some approaches may not. So the message may even be the same. However, you got to figure out what is the best way to get to your to pretty much get the attention of your players, and without yelling, threatening them, because there are some coaches who do that, and that's not healthy at all. That's not okay. So you have to figure out what way is the appropriate way. I remember a couple years back, my mentor, his name is Tyrone Keys, and he's a Super Bowl champion. He played on the, I believe, 1985 Bears team with the legendary Walter Payton and so many great players there. I don't want to go down on the names. As you have Refrigerator Perry, you have Jim McMahon as QB. You have, oh man, you have Michael Singletary, Hall of Fame linebacker, middle linebacker. I mean, it was so many legends on that team. Some say it was the greatest team of all time, but my mentor, he played on that team, and so he was sharing the importance of being a teacher. But while he was sharing that information with me, he also had his mentor there, who was probably 20 years older than him, and he was Mr. Tyrone Key's mentor was in his 70s, late 70s. And something that his mentor by the name, whose name was Coach Jenkins, something that Jenkins said, uh, it resonated with me. He told me one time that, you know, you can you can be fair as a coach, you want to be fair, but you can't be equal. In so many words, I know it could be confusing, but he was like, you want to, as a coach, you want to be fair, but you can't be equal. And so in so many words, he was saying that you want to be consistent, you want to be fair as how you make your decision, but you can't pretty much deliver your message the same to every student, or the same way to every athlete. Some athletes, they take a different approach for you to share your message to, and you have to recognize that. And that's the thing with being a teacher. You got to see what works with your players. There may be some players where you can get straight to the point, they make a mistake and you go there and you say, well, John, this is what you need to do. You need to go to this area and make this play, and that's it. However, you may see Mike and say, hey Mike, that's not how you make that play. But you can't give the same message as John. You may have to ask Mike to come into your practice, come into your office after practice, and you have to break it down in detail. It's all just finding ways to best get to your player. And then the way you deliver the message to John and Mike may totally be different from Sarah. Sarah may not even need you to assist her in learning that play. Sarah may just see it right off the bat and she's good to go. So it all depends on, it depends on your athletes, in which way is appropriate to teach them. So moving forward, when it comes to the attributes we use of being a great teacher, we have to keep in mind that, you know, in so many words, coaches, they learn on the go. As I stated before, there's no blueprint for this. So most coaches, they learn on the go, and it's through trial and error. They see what works and what doesn't work, and it changes all the time. Um, and then on top of that, we have to be realistic in this. And there are some coaches that never evolve. As the next point states, in reality, the teaching skills of some coaches never evolve to be anything other than mediocre. They said these individuals barely do more than the minimum required with regard to their ability to help their athletes achieve benefits of being part of a positive learning environment. So unfortunately, there's some coaches that, they just want to get by, and it all depends on their motives. So some coaches they're enamored with the title of being a coach, and they could care less about how they teach their athletes. Some coaches, for whatever reason, whatever perks or benefits are associated with that position, that's why they want it, and the team goes lacking. And and then some coaches they do it maybe because they have relatives. They come from a football family, and they want to follow in the path of one of their relatives, but they realize they really don't want to do it. So it's whatever their motives are, it contributes to that, and we just have to keep in mind that you know some coaches they never take the next step to being good teachers, and they're mediocre and bad, excuse me, in many cases. However, just as that there's a reality of there's being bad coaches, there are coaches that are great teachers. They become great teachers. As the point stated here, say not only are not only not only are they to grasp the core principles of what it takes to be an effective teacher, they are also able to apply the appropriate measures to their efforts to establish a nurturing learning environment for their athletes. So these coaches they become great teachers. They understand the principles of what it takes to be an effective teacher, but they also understand their players and what type of environment is needed to best um, captivate the attention of their athletes. And so this is what I say everyone in this room is aspiring to become. They're aspiring to become great teachers. And so it's just understanding what you need to do. So the next slide is this next slide is going to pretty much detail traits of great teachers, you know. And so this is going to be chapter 15. So qualities of a great teacher who are coaches, they have these type of qualities that's listed. You see accountable, adaptable, analytical, astute, caring, compassionate, cooperative, creative, dedicated, determined, empathetic, energetic, engaging, enthusiastic, evolving, fair, inspirational, introspective, kind, organized, passionate, resilient, resourceful, values based. So with all of these qualities listed, these are some of the qualities that you'll notice within a coach who's also a great teacher. Okay, the next slide. Next slide. Becoming a better teacher. Um, uh, Something that we have to realize, like for coaches, in order to be a great teacher, they have to have an understanding of context and when it's appropriate to teach their athlete. So you have to understand the context that takes place with your players. And this context goes into, how players learn, how players process information, what factors motivate them to learn more, and what barriers exist that may impede the learning process for your players. And so this is something to always keep in mind as a coach. It's not just teaching, and it's not just teaching or just throwing out information, because teaching is more than just throwing out information. And as I stated before with my illustration of athletes named John, Michael, and Sarah, um, it depends on it depends on who's your athlete and how they process information. And as a coach, you have to be patient. You have to be patient, and you have to be understanding to know that I may have to share the same information, but the delivery may be different depending on the athlete. And so that's something that you want to keep in mind. However, according to the authors, they list becoming a better teacher. They listed under what they identify as the 7 Bs. And so it says that in that regard, a coach who wants to be a great teacher adheres to the 7 Bs. And the point is, be someone with a firm knowledge of the subject matter. What are they teaching? Be someone who is able to make the material interesting and relevant to their players. Be equipped to teach all levels of learners. In reality, not every player is able to process information the exact same way. The coach may employ a variety of teaching techniques depending on the circumstance. Be forward thinking. To coach, the coach should have a relatively broad vision of their role as a coach and a teacher. Accordingly, they need to be able to anticipate and adapt to trends and changes that impact their position, particularly those involved in technology. Be an eager learner. As a role model to their players, the coach should ascribe to the concept that learning is an ongoing process for them that never ends. As such, they need to be open-minded, inquisitive, and constantly focused on being better at their craft. Be someone who builds constructive relationships with their athletes. Such a coach takes steps to establish an environment in which learning is more likely to occur. All factors considered, the coach with good interpersonal skills, which includes showing interest in their players, being a good listener, being able to verbally communicate effectively, exhibiting a positive, enthusiastic attitude, etc., tends to have athletes who care about what they say and want to learn from them. And finally, the last B is be someone who plans their efforts to teach. Great teaching does not occur by accident. It requires planning. And so these are the 7 Bs that the authors suggest that um, everyone who aspires to be a coach try to keep this in mind. Try to keep these 7 points in mind, and it can help guide you to becoming a great teacher. Okay, the next slide: avoiding the mistakes of poor teaching. Okay, um, that's something with coaching. As stated earlier, um, there's a reality of where there's, like in anything in life, there's good leaders, there's bad leaders, there's good teachers, there's bad teachers, there's good coaches, there's bad coaches. Um, as an aspiring coach, this is something to keep in mind. This is something to really focus on. So in order to be a great coach, you also want to avoid the mistakes that are associated with being a poor teacher. So you want to avoid the mistakes of poor teaching. So with the first point, they said all factors considered, every coach would hopefully strive to be an effective teacher. Coaching, however, is just like every other position. Some coaches work extremely hard at their craft, doing their best to improve every day. Others just try to get by, content with the status quo and being satisfied with who they are. And so this is like something I stated before, there's whatever the coach's motives are can determine what type of coach they are, what type of teacher they are. I mean, I would assume that everyone goes in with a mindset that they want to win and they want to help their athletes. However, I mean, coaching isn't easy. It's not easy. And sometimes um, when people who aspire to be a coach realize the difficulties that are associated with it or the challenges that they may encounter, they get discouraged and they check out, and for whatever reason. And so this is something that we'll touch on. Keep in mind that there's some coaches who are bad teachers. Like there's no and ifs buts about it. They're bad at teaching. But the crazy thing is, a lot of times they don't realize that they're bad at teaching. Um, it's like for whatever reason they just haven't been able to grasp the concepts that are involved with being a good teacher for that position. Sometimes that may be their experiences. Sometimes student athletes who grow up and they become coaches, they coach the same way they were coached. So if they're in an environment where the coach is always yelling, threatening them, taking the fun out of the game and turning it to something that shouldn't be. If the if the athlete who's now a coach reference those experiences and they say, you know what, coach did this and we won, they're going to assume that that same approach will work for them. And they believe it's right. However, it's not right. One thing we want to make sure that the athletes are having fun. Yes, we want to win. Competition is healthy, but you still want everyone to participate in this game and have fun. And if you're taking it out, if you're threatening athletes and you're taking the fun out of the game, it's a very sad, in my opinion, sad state of affairs in regards to the game of football. But yeah, there are some coaches that, depending on their experiences, they're bad teachers, but they don't realize it. They think they're good. And then there's some coaches who are bad teachers and they know they're bad, but they just don't care. And that's the really sad part. And like I said, for whatever reason, maybe it's the perks that are associated with that title. Maybe it's the prestige within the community, the local prestige that they may have for it. But whatever reason it is, they don't care. And at the end of the day, it hurts the players that they're coaching because they're not learning. And for whatever reason, the coaches' egos are getting in the way where they're either refusing to learn or they don't quite see that they're not good teachers. It's going to hurt the student at the end of the day. So something that something that you all want is to avoid certain mistakes. And so the next let me go to the next slide. Okay. Yeah. And so within the next slide, we also have listed here mistakes of poor teachers that poor teachers make. You have the first mistake. You know, some teachers, some coaches who are poor teachers, they don't know what they should about what they're teaching, what they're trying to teach. I mean, that's another thing. Like I said before, a good teacher also acknowledges that they need to learn as well. And that's that admission that, I need to, there's some areas I need to improve on. And sometimes when the game is evolving, the game of football, when there's it's a cycle, there's trends for whatever may be considered modern at that time. And if the game is trending for whatever reason in a new direction, some coaches, they may want to stick to their old ways, but they have to realize that, you know, that's not how the game is played anymore. For instance, if you look at college football played in the 1970s, even in the 1980s, we could go even to some points in the 1990s, you see, and this is something that the coaches you all will get to know, but you see this variation, this formation that's often played is all either the wishbone, the wing T, or flexbone, whatever it was. They had like three running backs in the backfield, and they ran the ball a lot. Some of the greatest college championship teams ran the ball a lot. They ran in that formation. If we look at our Oklahomas with Barry Switzer, or we could look at our Nebraskas, and you'll see that type of variation. And those teams used to kill their opponents. They used to just beat them. However, as the game kept trending to more of a passing oriented game, you start seeing teams move away from that variation of formation and they start going towards a pro style. Now, this one takes, let's say, it'll go from having three running backs in the backfield. And now, not only that, you'll have two wide receivers on the field, along with your fullback, your running back, and your tight end. And then you start seeing some teams win like that. You start seeing great teams such as Florida State, University of Miami, University of Southern California, USC. You start seeing them adopt this type of a style of play, and it's what won. Now we're talking right now, it's 2021. Mostly all the teams, a lot of teams are running a spread offense. You're seeing now where there's 5 receivers on the field. Sometimes a running back is not even lined up in the backfield. They're lined up as a receiver. And this has all come with the evolution of the game. And so going back to that first point, if a coach doesn't, if they don't know about the involvement of the game and they don't know about spread offenses and they're still trying to run a wing T, they're going to be limited. And it's going to be hard for them to teach about spread offenses, whether it's an air raid or what, it's going to be hard to teach that because, they're focused on a different type of offense. So that's a mistake. Some coaches, they don't know what they should about what they're trying to teach. Another point is some coaches don't have clear learning objectives with regard to their teaching efforts. Another point is some coaches don't have the necessary level of sound judgment to handle the demands and challenges of being effective teaching. Excuse me. Some coaches don't establish an effective learning environment for their players. And then some coaches don't have the organizational skills to be a good teacher. So these are all points, that are identified by the authors as, mistakes, um, mistakes that are of poor teaching. And finally, for the slide, we have an enormous payoff. So being a great teacher is easier for some coaches than for others, and that's the truth. Like I said, it's different. Some coaches, they'll be naturals. They catch on really fast. It's just they have that type of gift where they know how to present information in a way that's effective to, their players or their students. And then there's other coaches that they have to work and they develop. They have to really work hard on this. Either way is significant and it's needed. You have to be a great teacher, whether it comes natural to you. And even if it comes natural, it doesn't mean that you don't work on it. You still have to work on it. You still have to realize, you still have to recognize what's effective for your players and what's not. But either way, it's something that has to be developed. And then when it's developed and it's introduced to the team or it's incorporated to a team, the payoff is huge. It's positive. It'll be something that has positive results for the players, the program, and the coaches. And it's not just restricted to the football field or limited to the football field. This is something in everyday life as well. So 10 takeaways from this chapter is the 10 takeaways for being a great teacher. You have one, a coach who is a great teacher, understands the importance of effective teaching. Two, a coach who is a great teacher is aware that they should never stop learning how to be a better coach. Three, a coach who is a great teacher has clear expectations regarding what they expect their players to learn from their teaching efforts, learn from their teaching efforts. Four, a coach who is a great teacher thoroughly plans what and how they teach, thoroughly plans what and how they teach. Number five, a coach who is a great teacher creates a learning environment that's conducive to effective teaching. We have number six, a coach who is a great teacher has a working knowledge of the processes, concepts, principles underlying effective teaching. Number seven, a coach who is a great teacher has the ability to take a relevant subject and help make it crystal clear for their players. Number eight, a coach who is a great teacher utilizes their strengths to enhance their teaching efforts and works on improving their limitations. Number nine, a coach who is a great teacher realizes that being a positive role model is a critical aspect of their child. And number 10, a coach who is a great teacher exhibits a requisite level of commitment and emotional investment to the task. So these are your 10 takeaways for chapter 15. Okay, so we're on chapter 16 right now. Using social media. This is the fun part. 2021, social media is life. No matter where you are in the world, no matter what age you are, like social media is everything in some way, shape, or form. And as a coach moving forward for many of you all, it's definitely going to be important. You want to make sure that you utilize social media appropriately. So we have this quote from Eric Qualman. We don't have a choice on whether we do social media. The question is how well we do it, which is true, how effective it is. And so we see coaches now definitely utilizing social media. Coaches are utilizing social media, whether it's to share information about the program. There's a lot of high school coaches that are utilizing social media in order to help certain players gain exposure for college recruitment. Coaches use social media to network and to touch base with other coaches. However you all plan to use it, you want to make sure it's effective, because if you use it right, appropriately, it'll be great. But if you make some mistakes on it, it can definitely have some, um, lasting effects. So that aren't positive at all. So this is something that you want to be mindful of. Okay, so we're looking at social media. We want to, you as I stated earlier, it's life, and the authors, they refer to it as the biggest megaphone in the universe. So Yeah, there's, social media is huge. It's a part of all our lives. And it allows, different ones and who don't live in close proximity to us to get a peek of, what we're doing in our area of the world. And so it's powerful in that sense where we can touch base and network. Like, to be honest, without social media, you and I wouldn't be able to communicate right now. And so that's something to keep in mind. Like, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation right now. Uh, I want to say 15 years ago. I mean, it was probably starting out 15 years ago, but let's say we can go back 20, 21 years ago. It wasn't that popular. And so we probably wouldn't have this conversation 20, 21 years ago. But now, this is made available to us and we can reach each other, from me right now being in Eugene, Oregon, to you all being in Lagos. And so, like, that's the power of social media. Um, in regards to social media, uh, there's different types. As we see here, the types of social media, there's different types. And as a coach, it'll be, as far as appropriately utilizing social media, that process is easier once a coach understands uh, the different social media sites and platforms, depending on which, after realizing what is made available to you, depending on what you feel what you are more comfortable utilizing, um, that's how you can determine, that's how you can pretty much, depending on what you're more comfortable utilizing, that's how you can move forward with your social media initiative. I would say no matter what, every coach should definitely use it. I mean, whether it's to connect with each other in Legos, or maybe to even share information on talented athletes to coaches in the U.S., or to touch base and network, or even, reach out to me. You have a talented athlete, yes, let me know, and we could help share that athlete over here in the U.S. to other coaches, college coaches. In addition to that, you utilize social media as well. I mean, through social media, we see NAFA utilizes it a lot, to share information about upcoming training sessions and things like that. I mean, yeah, and NAFA's everywhere, whether it's Twitter, whether it's on Instagram, YouTube. NAFA has a presence, and so you want to follow that. You want to see that model right there. Before a coach, there may be something different. You may want to utilize TikTok. I mean, if you understand and how to best utilize TikTok and you're creative with that sense, utilize it. I mean, Instagram may be your thing. I would say tried. I mean, the article says when it comes to social media, the manual says, like, pick what best, don't pretty much utilize too many multiple areas because it makes stretch thin. However, I say, like, in this day and age, you know, there's nothing wrong with using multiple forms of social media. You want that presence out. But for this right here, according to the authors in this manual, they suggest not stretching yourself thin. So keep that in mind. And so we have diagram 16-1. It illustrates the common method for categorizing the different types of social media that are currently available. So let's go to the next slide. So the different types of social media, according to USA Football, the different types of social media, you have blogs, you have bookmarking, and different things. Like with bookmarking, bookmarking is pretty much platforms where you could tag posts and tag videos. And so we see something like Twitter is a popular bookmarking platform, where, like, if one of you all posted a video and I like it, I can like it, tag it, and retweet it. You have media sharing, you have micro blogging. This is pretty much blogging, but in a more condensed, usually not under, something that's under 300 words. And you can post gifs, memes in order to give a message, in order to deliver your message. And then you have social networks, which we talked about. You have your Instagram, your Twitter, your YouTube. There's all of that, and then you have social news. And so these are the different types of social media that USA Football is talking about. So keep in mind about that, the different forms of social media. And then within these different categories, you have different social media platforms. Okay, and so here, this best describes each point that was shared. So you have blogs, online forums that allow a coach to hold conversations by posting messages. Examples that are given is proactive coaching, footballscoop.com. Those are blogs. You have bookmarking. You have services that allow a coach to save, organize, and manage, i.e., tag various websites and resources around the internet. And so the examples that's given is Google Plus, Stumble Upon, something I stated is Twitter. Some of these, and the way social media platforms now are, they have different functions. And so like you'll notice that within there. So some of these areas, some of our most popular social media platforms can be categorized in multiple categories, and that's listed here. And so you have media sharing services that allow a coach to upload and share various media such as images and video. So as stated earlier, this is YouTube or Flickr. And then we got microblogging, services that push out relatively brief updates to anyone subscribed to receive them. So you have Twitter, Tumblr, then you have social networks, excuse me, services that allow a coach to connect with other individuals of similar interests and backgrounds. And that's examples given is LinkedIn, Facebook, and then you have your social news, services that allow people to post various news items and links to outside articles, site users, then vote on the items, and with the items receiving the most votes being displayed, the most this is cut off. So but we'll have it here, your social news, that's something else. You have your social news as another point. Okay, the next slide, employing social media. Okay, so employing social media. Used properly, social media can be a positive tool for coaches. For example, social media can increase the profile and exposure of a coach's program and whatever audience they are trying to target. It can also help them connect with other coaches, as well as inform them about potential job openings, ongoing events in their field, or relevant advancements in science. It can be utilized to connect to their team outside of practice. So this states right here the importance of social media. And so these are some of the important these are some of the like, I guess, the benefits of social media and what they can do. The next point, it says once a coach decides that they want to establish an online presence, they need to determine which of the various social media platforms they wish to engage. In regard, they will be confronted with choice overload. So once you all as coaches decide that, yes, I want to have establish a presence on social media, is now going through what's made available to you and deciding on which one will be the most useful to you, or which one you feel comfortable utilizing. Like I said, as a coach, you want to definitely do that. You want to connect. I stated earlier, good teachers, good coaches, they learn. They realize their shortcomings, and they understand that I have to learn more. And so as a coach, you're going to forever be learning. Even at the highest level, you have coaches here that meet up with coaches and they try to learn more about their schemes and see if they can implement it. You're always learning. And so sometimes just having that social media presence can help connect you with others within your profession where you continue to grow. And the next point, from a practical standpoint, decide on which social media platform to employ should be driven by what objectives they want their presence on social media to achieve. So, I mean, whatever reason you decide to have social media, it should be influenced by what you want to achieve. If you're creating a social media to bring more exposure to your football program, to your team, you'll provide clips. You provide clips of practice. You'll provide clips of practice. You'll provide some highlights of the games, just showing your team on the field. And then you may provide information, provide video clips on what your team is doing in the community. As we stated at our beginning training session, week 1 of our training session, we was talking about the role of football teams within the community. Sometimes coaches, they want to show this is what our team is doing within the community. You want to post that. However, if you want to do social media to get exposure for your young kids so they can play college ball in the US or play professionally, you may determine that, okay, I need to create or utilize a social media platform in order for me to get this information to bring more attention or gain more exposure for my student. Whatever it is, um, that's going to influence your reason for establishing a social media presence. Okay, so and it said once the coach determines what those purposes are, um, they say they then need to opt for a specific social media platform that will best address their needs and interests. So, like I stated before, once you realize what you want to do and what best works with you, that's when you determine which social media works best for you. So, listed below are a few points. It's in order to get the most out of social media experience, a coach needs to keep at least four factors in mind. And so these four factors are identified as social media as a tool, not a toy. As such, whether it becomes an asset for a coach as opposed to an impediment is largely is largely up to them. So you realize the significance of social media um, in regards to utilizing it. It's not something that you want to be immature or reckless on, because one thing we always say is that the like when you put stuff on the internet, it basically lasts forever. You're not taking it away. I have seen celebrities, I have witnessed athletes, coaches, I have witnessed just professionals post things on their social media, and we'll move on, forget about it in life, and then something happens, and then all of a sudden these same posts are dug up 10 years later to pretty much indict uh, the said person or whatever. So or for whatever reason. So the thing is, you don't want to be reckless on it. You want to make sure it's a tool to help you achieve the purpose you set out to do. The next point: nothing is ever truly private. The coach needs to fully understand at least one basic truth with regard to social media. Content posted on the internet can last forever. So I stated it, earlier, like a couple seconds ago, I stated it. Whatever's on the internet lasts forever. That's what's going to take place. It's not going to go away. So as coaches, you need to keep in mind about that. The next point is coaches who retweet, share something, own it. Freedom of speech is not the same as freedom from consequences. A reality that a coach who retweets, share the contrary message will soon discover. So this is something that's also referenced. I mean, within, the authors reference it because of their experience of coaching American football within the US. And so, yes, we have freedom of speech, but depending on what you say, there are consequences to it. There's been cases where, you have different ones in positions. They either make anti-Semitic remarks, racist remarks, homophobic remarks, all that stuff. They'll post it on social media, and there are repercussions to that. And so, for you all in Lagos, I would say have the same approach as well. Like, you may feel that you wanted to share something, but if it's something that has nothing to do with your team, if that's why, like, whatever you do on your private social media, that's your business. However, if there's a social media that you create to establish a presence or to gain more exposure for your team, your organization, anything that's associated with football, you have to be mindful of what you're posting out there. I would suggest stick on something that's relevant to what or consistent with what you say what you want to create. Now, I'm not gonna say, don't say anything, because I mean, even with me, I do a lot of social justice work, and I do post in support of different organizations. I post in support of Black Lives Matter. I post in support of uh different different advocacy groups that I feel are helping to empower those who are deemed oppressed. And so that's what I do. You may do the same. I feel like there's anything that you can speak up for, that's fine. However, keep in mind, just like the author stated, keep in mind that, whatever you post, it lasts forever. And then, there are consequences to it. Even if you're speaking up on something that's right, there may be consequences to it as well, but just keep that in mind. Don't be caught off guard. Okay, the next point is every post a coach makes is a reflection of who they are, what the coach needs to ask themselves as they employ social media is, what do their efforts say about them? So yeah, just keep in mind that whatever you post is a reflection on you. And if it's something that's totally off rails and it has nothing there irrelevant from what you're posting on your team social media page, then don't do it. Keep it strictly focused on your team, your players. Now, what you do on your personal time, that's you. That's your personal time. But right now we're talking about social media when it comes to establish social media for a football team. So that's you. Whatever you post, there's consequences to it. But when we're dealing with kids and trying to help people realize their dreams, and you posting something that's irrelevant on the page that's for the football team, that's an issue right there, and that's something to keep in mind. So whatever coach posts is a reflection of themselves. And I have seen some coaches, they get really reckless and they post something negative about an opposing player. And what's sad about that is sometimes that's in high school, and the thing is, they're still kids, even though this athlete may be 16, 17, or 18, and they play for another team, they're still a kid. you know just because they're not on your team, that doesn't give you the right to bash them. So I would say that with you all as well. Keep that in mind. Don't use social media to bash your players. You may use it to uplift them, but don't use it to bash your players. And then in reality, some coaches view social media as either an unwelcome distraction or an unwanted necessity. Others view it as an opportunity to use technology to accomplish a variety of things they want to do. Either way, social media is a reality that every coach must confront. Going forward, its presence will only grow, its impact will become even more significant. Maximizing the efforts of their online presence can encompass a number of issues for a coach. All factors considered, these concerns can serve as the building blocks of their pathway to success. So this slide 16-1, it's just showing that the different steps involved in employing social media. And so you have established objectives for using social media, develop a content plan of action, craft a strategy for achieving their goals, know the rules of social media platforms being used, develop a systematic, well thought out plan for turning the strategy into reality, stay current, always be learning, always be learning. Decide where to draw the line with regard to personal privacy. So these are all steps to employing social media as a football coach. Please keep that in mind. And then we have this slide, common mistakes when using social media. And so when it comes to mistakes happen. No one's perfect. You have mistakes, everyone makes mistakes. However, a coach should be aware, and they should make a conscious and concerted effort to avoid making these mistakes. The authors say that it should make a concerted effort to being flawless. And so, like, that's something that you want to keep in mind. Like, you're not going to be perfect, you're going to make mistakes, but you want to be aware for the most part of what's taking place. And so, this is something to really this is something that you really want to focus on as coaches moving forward. Um, you know, Another thing is that, some of these mistakes, these false steps, they can lead to unwanted consequences. So that's the reason why you want to be careful and make sure you're not, that you don't make careless mistakes. Mistakes happen, but you want to try to avoid them if you best can. And so, in doing so, you want to avoid the following mistakes. You want to avoid getting too personal. such as addressing sensitive topics or engaging in unduly negative feedback. So, don't, in so many words, don't get into back and forth with people online, especially if you utilize social media for your team. Don't argue with different ones. We all call them trolls. We know what trolls are. Some people, they just wake up in the morning, they just want to argue with you. Don't get into it. The authors say avoid sensitive topics. Over here, we consider sensitive topics such as, topics such as race, politics, religion. You want to avoid that. As I stated before, like, I don't get into arguments like that on my social media, because on my social media I do retweet, I share students. Some of the students that's even here today in this session, I'm retweeting your videos. And so if you go to my feed, like I said, I support Black Lives Matter. I support a number of groups. I support a number of groups that need my support, and I speak up for it. But that's just me. That's what I feel is important. I'm going to speak up for my people. I want to speak up for Black people, for social justice. I'm going to speak up for the Latinx community. I'm going to speak up for earlier this year, and what's been transpiring is that within the Asian American communities, there was a number of things. There was a number of harm being done to people that are identified as individuals within that community. And so I spoke up for them. I mean, I'm going to speak up for the LGBTQIA community and support. Like, I believe everyone has rights. I believe everyone has the right to live and the right to be safe. And so that's just what I do. And so I would say, as coaches, you all, whatever is in your heart, that's a decision you made. But what the coaches for USA Football suggest is that you stay away from sensitive topics, but also sometimes we're going back to the point, one thing that many coaches notice over here, like I can say in the US, as many of you all know, race is a serious issue. And what a lot of coaches did last year was they spoke up, especially after the George Floyd murder. You start seeing a lot of college coaches speak up in support of their athletes who were majority Black, and speaking up for the Black community. And this was going back to what stated earlier in our training session, is that as a good coach, you want to show that you care. And so when a lot of these coaches, they may have been Caucasian or a non-Black community, but the majority of players on their team were Black. And so when you have a community that's dealing with this in the back of their mind on your team, and their mind not on football because they're like, what's going on? As a coach, you can't do anything but show your support. And so for many of these coaches, they showed that they cared. They showed that they cared, and they spoke on their behalf, and they spoke in support of their athletes. So this is the thing. So if something is on your heart and it exhibits that you care, you may feel compelled to speak on in support of it. But just keep in mind, there's certain things that may be considered too personal. And you may want to think twice about putting it up. But I would definitely say, when it comes to engaging in unduly negative feedback, avoid that. Avoid going back and forth with any troll or anything. Remember why you created your social media page. The next one is hijacking hashtags. A coach should clearly define the hashtags they use it so that it reaches the intended audience. Yeah, don't just pick up any hashtag because it sounds good, because it may not be, because that's what, in many ways a hashtag is an algorithm. So you may be drawing something that has nothing to do with what you intended to do. So be careful which hashtags you take. The next one is overdoing sharing content or statuses. In other words, a coach should not spam their followers. So don't, just stick to what you're doing. Just retweet, or repost, whatever you intend to do about your team. But don't try to avoid private messages. Try to avoid just spamming your followers. The next one is being on too many social media platforms. A coach should keep in mind that they don't have to engage in every single social network. Too many can dilute their efforts on the key network. So this was said before. It depends on the individual, but you do want to avoid spreading yourself too thin and being on too many social media networks. So I would say figure out what works best for you, and just stick to that. I notice many coaches they work with Instagram, Twitter. Some coaches even get in TikTok. Back in the day, they used to utilize Facebook. I mean, it depends on what and some coaches utilize YouTube. I mean, it's a lot as social media platforms. And then there's other ways. Some coaches blog, some coaches have their website. So it depends what you do. I say figure out what works best for you and what you're interested in, focus on it. And authors are right. You don't have to be on every single one of them, figure out where is your I would suggest, and this is what one of my friends um actually shared with me a while back. Um, and they told me like they suggested that I actually should like I actually should focus on, where do I get the most engagement from? And so this person is actually brilliant what they do. Their name, look them up, follow them on social media. Their name is um, Jordan Dinwiddie, and brilliant individual. She wrote a number of great commercials and everything. Commercials for LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, everything. Brilliant young lady. But she shared with me that I should focus when I do my social media, focus on where I get the best engagement from and stick to that. And so where I get most of my engagement from is LinkedIn and Twitter. And it works. That's how I reach out to coaches. That's how I reach out to players. Sometimes I have a social media, I have an Instagram, and I'm able to reach out on that. And it works to an extent. It works. I'm doing actually more. I'm doing more Instagram as of lately. And then I have a Facebook. I think we all have Facebook. It's sort of like an email. But most of my efforts has in the past was always Twitter and LinkedIn. And then recently it's been Instagram. So the advice that Jordan gave me, I suggest that you all do the same. Figure out what's best for you. Whatever you feel you get the best engagement from, utilize that. And that's what works for you. Um, let me see. Failing to use social management tools to manage their social media accounts. This is something that mistake you want to avoid. Placing quantity over quality. A coach should always focus on quality as opposed to quantity of content. Yeah, you don't have to just throw out like every day. I need more content. I need more content. No, you want to put quality. If you have a player that you're trying to help get exposure, put their best plays and just wait. Wait till the next time they make a really good play. But don't just throw out everything. Remember quality over quantity. The next one is you want to avoid, using social media only as a megaphone. Social media is a two-way street. So you don't want to just put your information out there, but you want to listen and learn too. What helped me out in LinkedIn is that I was able to network and connect with different coaches, professional scouts, scouts in the NFL, CFL, coaches in the NCAA, NAIA, and I was able to listen. And then in return, many of them was able to listen to me as well. So you want to keep that up. Sometimes it's good to just network. You may want to network and do a project together with someone on social media. You may want to network with your fellow coaches, and you all, this is all will bring attention to. All of this will bring attention to. Uh, all of it will bring attention to the students that you're working with. So you may have, two coaches. You may want to come in and work together on a podcast to bring exposure to the American football players in Nigeria. The Nigerian student athletes. These are things that you could work on together. So it's a two-way street. The next one is not paying attention, listening to what their audience is saying can be a form of a social suicide. So what they're saying is like, this it's going back to it's a two-way street. You may want to listen to, what your audience is saying. Sometimes you may post the wrong information. And if you ignore your audience, you'll miss out on them sharing that, okay, this isn't appropriate or I'm wrong in this area. So you want to listen. And then the next point is not proofreading. Proofreading involves ensuring that one social media message says what the coach intended it to say. Okay, so proofreading is important. Like I can definitely say I have fell victim to not proofreading, and I would hate to go back and check some of my posts. I mean, especially some posts that I really feel good about, and I'm very, enthusiastic about posting. What you're saying in your head sometimes doesn't get written out or don't get written out on paper, and sometimes you don't type it in when you're posting it. And so if you do it too fast, you'll have a lot of grammatical errors. Don't proofread. Proofreading is important because you may have that really good message that can catch a lot of eyes, but if it's all over the place, you lose out on the opportunity of gaining new followers, gaining new audience members, or networking with that person you're looking to network with. So please remember to proofread. That's a very common mistake on social media. Okay, and then in the challenges, there's challenges that are associated with social media. You know, what's helpful for coaches is for them to be aware and to be aware of the challenges and to recognize the basic challenges. And so there are challenges associated with social media, but as a coach, you want to be aware of it. And some of the challenges that are identified is how to use it, how to use social media, how to get started on social media, how to develop a viable strategy plan for social media, how much time will be involved. If as a coach, if you're doing it properly, making sure your athletes are representing themselves properly. And this is something as well. We talk about social media for our coaches, but as a coach, you all need to share this with your athletes as well, because I have known athletes who missed out on scholarships because they had inappropriate information shared on their social media. And you don't want, anytime you have an opportunity to get a full scholarship, especially a full scholarship to a university, and then but that opportunity is taken away because there's some inappropriate information on your social media page. There's cases of kids, taking pictures with guns, taking, pictures of gang signs, or making inappropriate statements on social media, and that scares coaches away. So you want, as coaches, inform your athletes that you want to make sure that the content on your social media page is appropriate. And so that's important. That's a challenge that exists, but make sure your athletes know about it. All of this can be overwhelming and frustrating, and it can be confusing too. However, it's definitely helpful. As I stated earlier, it's helpful if a coach is aware and know how to circumvent the basic perceived challenges that are within social media. The final point on this slide is coaches need to educate their athletes in proper use of social media on a daily basis. Coaches should lead by example and use their social media account as a positive tool that engages their audience. So this is something to keep in mind. I mean, even though this is for the coaches that are present today, the information that we're sharing today, you want to relay it to your players, because just as just as the coach is a representative of a team, so are your players. In many ways, your players are a representative of you. If you have a player that posts inappropriate things on social media, it's going to look at you. They're going to be like, well, what is the coach doing? Like, does the coach have any control over his team, over their team? And so you want to keep that in mind. So these are all important measures to keep in mind and to make sure that you incorporate it to your program, to the policies of your program, and make sure that it's also ingrained into the consciousness of your athletes as well. And finally, another tool in the toolkit. That's what social media is. It's another tool in the toolkit. It's another strategy that you can use to help build up your organization. The authors state that engaging in properly executed social media effort is a win-win situation for both the coach and their program. In fact, with an appropriate amount of thought and planning, social media can become another tool in a coach's toolkit. Such a tool can not only be an indispensable asset, it can also be a positive difference maker. So you want to make sure that you master this, because it can help you in many ways. And so we have the 10 takeaways for chapter 16. Number one, the coach who wants to use social media effectively is aware of their aware, excuse me, of its potential impact on both themselves and their program. Number two, the coach who wants to use social media effectively realizes the need for creating a social media usage policy for their staff and players. Number three, the coach who wants to use social media effectively knows that social media channels offer unparalleled opportunities for them to interact with members of their school's community. Number four, the coach who wants to use social media effectively adapts their social media efforts as appropriate when appropriate. Number five, the coach who wants to use social media effectively is cognizant of the fact that the internet and by extension, social media is an elephant. It never forgets. Keep that in mind. That's a great metaphor. Number six, the coach who wants to use social media effectively draws a line between their public online persona and their private life. Number seven, the coach who wants to use social media effectively understands that social networking is an accessible and powerful tool for highlighting and acting on issues, causes of interest to them, their staff, and the players. Let me reread that again. The coach who wants to use social media effectively understands that social networking is an accessible and powerful tool for highlighting and acting on issues and causes of interest to them, their staff, and their players. The coach who wants to use social media effectively believes that all factors considered, such a task is not unduly complex. In reality, it just involves planning, focus, commitment, and strong work ethic. Number nine, the coach who wants to use social media effectively is convinced that time devoted to social media is well spent, as opposed to being time that could be better expended on something else. And number 10, the coach who wants to use social media effectively adopts a social media strategy that is consistent with their values, the available resources, time and money, and their interests and needs, goals and objectives. So this is what's taking place. These are 10 takeaways from chapter 16. And that's what we're doing. That's all we're doing today. Tomorrow, Jesse Hall will take chapters 17 through 19. But since we're finished with the chapters on today, I want to open up the floor to anyone who has any questions. I actually see Coach Lawrence is here. And so, Coach Lawrence, is there anything that you would like to share before we open up the floor to anyone with any questions? Coach Lawrence, do you have any questions? Do you want to say anything? Okay. I see Coach maybe tied up right now. Oh, Coach Lawrence, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to say it was okay today. I'm sorry I came late into the session, and just still want to say thank you to everyone that's attended. And of course, we all know that tomorrow we'll be closing the entire session for coaching, and by next Saturday, we're I think taking the referee aspect, and I think that should be done in that's after the next week, and the additional week, one additional week, and we're done for refereeing, and then the exams is going to come. But I just want to assure everyone that the material for this session would be, I mean, for the entire session, not for just the session, just so you can prepare for the exams. So the entire material from chapter 1 to chapter 19 will be sent to the platform so that you can all have it and get ready for the exams. And that's also the same thing that will happen for the referee aspect. The referee aspect is not much. It's not much, but it's very, very exciting. Something you never ever want to miss, and I'm sure that as short as it is, it will require you to be, mentally at alert. I mean, prepared for it. You know, so that's just all I can say. So appreciate everyone for coming on this evening. It's good. At least we're happy we all made it to the end. It's not easy. I must really, really, really commend everyone that made it through to the end. Yes, and I'll say congratulations in advance because last meeting we had at the International Federation level, opportunities are going to be coming up for referees and coaches, at the international level. So to that effect, I think we're already taking a great step to get our own Nigerian people ready. So I'll just say congratulations in advance to everyone who has made it through to this day. Yeah, thank you very much. It's indeed worth it. Yeah, thank you. So that's all I have to say. So I know tomorrow is another day. Thank you, Coach Jeff. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, Coach Lawrence. And I like to co-sign on that. Just want to say congratulations in advance to everyone. Thank you all for the commitment and dedication that you all exhibited. I know I keep saying that a lot, but that's what it was. I mean, coming out on a Saturday evening to learn more about coaching, and I know it's not just for what you want to do, but I know it's also to help the community. And so that's why I admired what you all have done. And so, as I stated before, it's an honor for Go Educate to be able to collaborate with NAFA and be able to sit in the presence of all you brilliant people. So thank you all. But before we end, are there any questions? Is there any questions anyone has to the topic that was discussed? If you do, just raise your hand and just use the hand icon button if you have any questions, and we can answer those questions. If not, we can conclude and see you back on tomorrow at 8 p.m. your time. Okay, before we leave, I see a question from Samuel. He said, Samuel states that the question that was asked, what consideration do you have for those that are, that are resuming back to school on Monday? I'm talking about the stress. And you're speaking from a perspective as a teacher. Okay. In regards to teaching, I guess my consideration is to take some of the principles that was shared within this concept. I think that you want to definitely show the students that they care when you're there. Be patient. Also recognize that some students they learn differently. Um, I think those are important, and once you have that in mind, once you know that all those dynamics exist, I think as a teacher, you already have the skill set that's needed to be able to educate your students. But I think that might help relieve some stress. So just take your time, be patient, understand that students learn differently, and just go from there. But that's my consideration. Do the best, continue to do the best. Just show the many kids they just want. I know over here in the U.S., students just want to know that the teachers they care about them. Now that's not going to say every student appreciates it, because you have some students you're still working with kids, and so they're immature. But that's what you want to definitely show that you appreciate it. I had a friend one time told me that we all play a role in someone's life, and depending on the season, that's the role you play. Sometimes your role is just to be there to discuss. Sometimes your role is just to be there um, to discuss a point, to educate someone right there. It doesn't necessarily mean that once you provide that information to that particular individual that they're going to listen, but it may take 15 people, for that person to finally listen. And your role may be to be that seventh person within that line of 15 to share that this is the information you need moving forward. So it's just understanding what your role is. Don't take it to heart. Just be honest. Um, and at the end of the day, it's going to be up to whether or not that individual listens. So as a teacher, just play your role. Be honest. Care about the kids, and just continue to do your best. Um, as far as Jesse, Jesse had an emergency had a last minute schedule as an official. He still officiates, but he had a last minute officiating obligation they asked him to do, so he wasn't able to make it here in time. But he will be back tomorrow, and he can't wait to get back tomorrow. He's really looking forward to concluding our sessions with you all. I see another question. Please advise on the practice sessions for the coaching aspect. When is that going to happen, considering we are just 2 weeks, 2 exams? Okay, so the coaching aspect, for the practical session. So we're gonna, Coach Lawrence, do you want to talk about that? Do you want to mention that your plans for that?
Sorry, what's the question again?
Oh, it was a question on the practice session for the coaching aspect. This person would like to know, when would that take place since the exam is 2 weeks away?
Okay, so the plan for us to get the entire school set up with their training sessions and um, uh, the coaching in terms of, but I mean coaching now, I'm saying, when they start the training, they don't have, we're not uh, seeing them as already made coaches. So they still plan to see that at least one experienced coach is, still working with them until they are fully stabilized, in terms of, being able to take over completely. So that's a plan, and we intend to start next week because we know the schools are back to session next week. So the plan is to see that they all, start at the same time because we don't want one school to be too much ahead of another school so that when it comes to playoffs or exhibitions, they will be able to perform at the same level. And then so we can know those who are actually more skilled and, so that's the plan. Next week, we'll start the exercise of seeing that they have, the first thing is orientation to the players because now the coaches here now have taken this training, are already coaches. Then we need to also look into the aspect of the athletes. They don't know American football. They probably have seen it on TV. They probably have families who plays the game somewhere, maybe back home here or abroad. That's I think all they might have. So they need to know about the game, more than just the coaches, being there. So there's going to be an orientation session where all students are supposed to, see what the game is about and how it is played and the opportunities in the game. And after all this, teams are set up. And after teams are set up, practice sessions are scheduled. And after a couple of practice sessions, exhibitions are expected to kick off. And after the exhibitions kick off, and at the end of the entire exhibitions, then we look at getting the all-stars together and then use the all-stars to play a kind of launching of a league system. And then after the league system is launched, then they have to go get ready to play a complete season. So it's a whole process. For next week, everything starts by God's grace. So all this starts next week. Also, the referee session starts also next week. So a lot's going to happen from next week, and I think that for the teachers, because I saw someone talking about the stress involved. They want to know how they can manage the entire stress involved. So the thing is, most of the time, practice sessions is going to be either within the school hour, so that you don't finish, except your school is a boarding school. Most of the time, practice has to be like maybe during a particular hour within the school period, or it's going to be weekends. And some schools might want to have more than 2 or 3 training sessions in a week. So now it depends on how you want to achieve this. But the goal is, to see that, everything works according to what will fit you and fit the school and also the athletes. So if it's once, if it's twice, but just it's going to be more about the athletes, because some athletes can actually do much even individually, like on their own. They train for just a bit together with the other athletes, and then they go back home or back to their hostels and try to do personal or individual workouts just to get themselves ready, So yeah, you just need to build something, have a model that will actually make your work and your life much easier. That's the plan. But next week we start everything, and we'll let you all know how it's going to be, because I know this Lagos State initiative to see that American football is in all secondary schools is in districts. Since we have 6 districts in Lagos, we're going to have sometimes a particular district bring all the schools that are involved, bring them together and work together. That's going to happen as well. So I mean, there's so many ways we want to, come into making this more effective for everyone. So, but next week we still start the whole process, and we'll let you all know. So that's it. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you, Lawrence. Okay, thank you. I see one more question, and that's it. And it was just saying, how are we going to get the equipment and other necessary material to teach the game? And so, Coach touched on that, on making sure that there's some type of simulated setting where you all will be able to practice what you are learning. I'll say for officials, we're working on making sure they get the equipment that's needed. For coaching, you'll probably have to share with me what equipment that you are looking for, but I would assume that, as Coach stated, with getting the teams and putting you all in position to coach your teams or to be a part of a coaching staff, I mean, that's something to move forward with. But I would say, as far as like the necessary material to teach the game, I'll probably need you to share with Coach Lawrence. What do you mean about that? I mean, what do you mean by that? What type of equipment do you feel you need to teach the game? But other than that, I mean, that's my final. That's it for today. If you all have any questions, please feel free to share with Coach Lawrence. And please, if something comes up, please share with Coach Lawrence. We'll be sure to touch base on it before our meeting starts. We've been pushing it back because we're not having enough people initially when it starts, but we're going to start at 8 o'clock. We are flexible, but the time is 8 o'clock, and so we'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for your time.